Welcome to the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Anita Brooks, and here you'll find teaching topics, interviews, conversations, and coaching tips, all designed to help you level up. We all lead someone. The question is, are we leading well, exceptionally well? So join me on a quest, not for perfection, but absolutely for exceptional leadership. On today's episode of Exceptional Leadership, I want to talk about something that is crucial to your success or your failure, depending on how you approach it and the actions that you take. So the topic we're going to discuss today is mindset. See, though leading people is our most important role, leading exceptionally well begins with our own mindset. And it also is affected by the mindset that we influence, I'll say, in other people. So I'm going to share with you a few things that have come up recently in some of my business coaching that I'm hoping is going to help you influence exceptionally well. First and foremost with yourself, and then with those that you are leading. So very recently, I was in a business coaching session with a group of managers. And as we were going through that, I took them into an exercise where I encouraged them to share some thoughts and ideas, kind of going back in time. So I just want to talk to you today about starting out right when you are leading, say, a new hire, and thinking about the mindset approach that you have in yourself, as well as the mindset that you help to embed in others. Because your leadership impact does begin on day one of a new hire's time with your business. How you interact with them at their entry point, or don't, frankly, will determine their perspective of you, but this in turn trickles into how they view your company. If you appear cold, aloof, unapproachable, and otherwise disconnected from the work being done and the people doing it, a subconscious assumption will likely kick in. It will appear as if you don't care. And studies have shown that employees mirror the attitudes, actions, and behaviors of their leaders. So if you seem uncaring beyond a surface interest, your employees won't care either. But there's an easy and inexpensive solution to help prevent chronic apathy from spreading throughout your business. I suggest investing a few minutes to personally introduce yourself to new hires. And if you do that, you can set a powerful tone and you can trigger immediate employee engagement. A few years ago, I challenged Dave. He was the president of one of my coaching clients, and I asked him to become part of the HR new hire orientation process. So after receiving his agreement, I helped him craft a very short and simple script, but the results were astounding. So how it worked is at a predetermined time during the orientation process, Dave joined the HR administrator and the new hire or hires, depending on whether there was one or more. But it takes less than 5 minutes for him to say something that he does on a regular basis now when they're bringing new people in. He says, "Hi, I'm Dave. I'm the president, and I wanted to take a couple of minutes to let you know who I am, and I wanted to meet you. And thank you for joining our team and helping us make a difference in people's lives through what we make. Our mission is simple. We work hard to craft high-quality parts that allow people and products to fly safely from point A to Z. Your spouse, children, parents, grandparents, other family members, or friends may be directly impacted by what you're going to help produce here. Think about it this way. Some of the food you buy, the clothes you wear, cleaning supplies you use, and more are likely flown at least partway to the store that you purchase from. So I want you to understand that what you do here impacts someone or something you care about. And I'm grateful we can offer you a good wage and meaningful work. And I'm sure John here can answer any questions you have or find someone who will. But I just wanted you to know who I am and to personally say, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to our team. Now, you see, that didn't take very long at all. But Dave does that as a matter of practice. And the morale in their ranks has just improved so much. And it's become like a positive virus that's passed around their whole organization. But you may be saying to yourself, well, I don't feel the topmost leadership position, or, maybe for you, it wouldn't make sense to follow that script verbatim, but you can still see amazing results no matter what position you're in, or even if you tweak, how you say that. In fact, if you're listening to this, you may be newer to management and you may be coming at leadership from a lower level. But imagine the following with me. Let's say that your president or CEO follows the process I just outlined. But then you, as a department head, a superintendent, a line lead, assistant manager, or middle manager, approach new hires, let's say their second day on the job. And you could reinforce what your president or CEO said at their hiring onset. You could just add the following or something similarly appropriate. You could say, for instance, "Hi, I'm Robin. I manage customer service. I'm sure you've already been welcomed, but I wanted to personally tell you I'm glad you're here. We're really fortunate that we get to produce airplane parts that keep America running. I like knowing that every time someone goes to the pharmacy, we probably made it possible for them to buy their meds. Or I think about the little kids whose eyes light up on Christmas morning when they open their presents because we helped transport the gifts their parents or grandparents bought for them. Isn't that cool? Anyway, I look forward to working with you in producing high quality parts that allow people and products to fly safely from point A to Z." Now think about this. Think about some of the elements that I just shared. One, there is a unified message that comes from that top, like president, CEO role, but then it's reinforced by someone at, say, more of a mid-level management. And can you imagine if 2, 4, or maybe 10 managers all said something similar to a new hire? Very quickly, a few things would become evident through that kind of a process. And all of them, and I'm going to share these points with you here in just a second, but all of them would help to create and reinforce a consistently positive mindset in the workplace. And I don't know about you, but I certainly haven't met a client yet that when they first bring me in, they don't want to see more of that. So here's some things that I want to point out if you were to follow this type of a process. One, there would be shown to that new hire or those new hires an alignment in leadership thinking. So right from the onset, they see that there is unification. Secondly, clear expectations would be communicated and it would be done consistently. Now, you would need to do a little bit of work on the front end of something like this to make sure that you are all aligned in what you're saying. One thing you don't want to do is have 2 or 3 different leaders giving contrasting or conflicting messages. That actually happens a lot because leaders don't talk amongst themselves to predetermine the message that we want to make sure that our people get. Well, here's something else that I want to point out. See, when I worked with Dave and his team to help create this process, one of the things that we had to do first was we had to tweak their mission statement. Now, I don't know what kind of mission statement you have, but frequently when I go into businesses, I'll the first thing I ask, which I always get a chuckle out of, who can tell me what your mission statement is? I think maybe in all the years I've been doing this and all the businesses I've worked with, maybe 2 times have I had someone who was able to tell me what the mission statement was. And that's because typically people will have a minimum of a paragraph for their mission statement. Some people have a page or 2, but who can remember that. And if you can't remember something, then you can't do something with it. And when it comes to a mission statement, that mission statement is intended to be like a finish line we cross, or a target that we hit, or a goal or objective that we have a specific measurable outcome that we are looking for by a specific date and time. But if you have this long-winded kind of abstract, open-ended, not really clear mission statement, one, people typically can't remember it, and not even much of it, frankly, because it doesn't make any kind of an emotional connection, and there's nothing concrete for their brain to hold on to. So if you want to set a good, solid mission in the mind, and by the way, this is a critical point of positive mindset in the workplace, then I always suggest coming up with a one-sentence, very simple mission statement that everyone can remember. So in the case of Dave and his team, their mission is simply this: we work hard to craft high-quality parts that allow people and products to fly safely from point A to Z. That makes sense for their business. And that's something that everyone in the organization can wrap their minds around, and they can memorize that. And what that does, it instills, even at a subconscious level, that deep inner expectation that, well, think about this. There's a couple of very key points that are in their mission statement. One, the expectation is we work hard. Two, the expectation is that we don't just craft parts, we craft high quality parts. Three, we instill that expectation to remember that people and products are impacted by the work that we do. And lastly, they focus on that word safe. Fly safely from point A to Z. So in other words, what they are telling people subliminally is the work we do here is able to keep airplanes in flight safely so that people don't get hurt and people get the products that they need. So think about that. And so what I've done with them is I've worked with them at this level in the hiring process, but I've even worked with them to help craft, I'm trying to think of the terminology here, job descriptions. And so many times, and right now we're still in kind of this market where it's an employee's market because it's getting harder and harder to find employees, and especially good quality employees who are the right fit for an organization. So more and more I'm being asked to help craft these kinds of, it's become really a marketing piece where you're marketing to try to attract the right kind of talent in your organization. But then what I remind my clients is that's great and I can help you craft that, and we do that. There's some very emotional points that so many of these job descriptions lack. They're just like dry and dull, and they sound almost like every other one out there. If you want to create a good mindset from the get-go, do it even when you're listing and posting jobs. Make sure that there's some kind of an emotional connection that also attaches to the expectations so that you are attracting more of the type of people that you want to work with you. But anyway, once you do that and you hire them in, that needs to be consistently reinforced. And so what I'm describing, having multiple managers who are able to come in, they are able to, in some form or fashion, repeat that mission statement very quickly. That employee's mindset catches on and knows this is an ongoing expectation of me. And there's also a level of accountability that begins right there at that start. It is the right start because then that employee knows that, okay, everybody's expecting it. So if I don't live up to expectation, there probably is going to be some kind of accountability or maybe even discipline connected to that. So just make sure that your mission statement is one that sets the right tone, the right mindset, that it's got some clear and very specific things in it, but it's simple, it's memorable, it's something people can they can train their brain to remember that and recall it. And it's just one sentence. So anyway, didn't mean to get on that tangent, but that is such an important piece that so many of the businesses and organizations I work with miss. So they do, for this company, they have created this short, concise, one sentence mission statement. And so then it becomes something people can remember and they can use it as a target to hit. Well, another thing from what I just described is, it helps to remind people that there is alignment, clarity, and intentionality in place. And so, as I just said, when people understand that from the get-go, they also have that innate understanding that accountability exists to support expected standards. And when you have clear expected standards that are expressed early and expressed often, there's an emotional connection that happens from people, and then people tend to work toward meeting those expected standards. And finally, by doing something like that, it helps people understand the why behind the what. And this motivates people to greater productivity and performance. And this is something that you as a manager or a leader will be graded on, is your people's performance. But it's been proven in study after study that when people understand why they're doing something, they are much more prone to follow it through to completion and to do it well. And aren't those the kind of mindset qualities that we want for our employees? Now, let's talk about something that happened just a few days ago where I met with this management group and I took them through this exercise. And what I asked them was very simple. I asked them to think back when they were working under someone else's leadership. And I asked them to share 3 things with me. And of course, I gave them a couple of minutes to think about this, but I wanted to know some pros from working under a previous leader or leaders, plural, cons, and then I asked them if you could go back in time and you could thank them for something, what would you thank that leader or those leaders for? And so it was very interesting, the responses that I got from that. And I think that this goes to mindset. And I really want you to think about this and consider what kind of mindset you have as you're interacting with the people that you're leading. So here's the pros that came up. One person said, I really appreciated the fact that they pushed and motivated people to do a better job. And even went as far to say is there were things that, sometimes they wanted me to do, asked me to do, told me to do. And frankly, I didn't think I could do it, but they did push me in sometimes. And it was interesting because there ended up being some conversation about this. And some of the managers in the room had positive experiences in their minds, and some had negative experiences in their minds. But frankly, what was fascinating to me, the outcome was the same, because even the ones who said that the approach was negative, they said that it would have been better and they thought they would have gotten there faster if the way that the leader had approached it would have been better. But still, the end result was it did push them to do more than they would have thought was possible on their own. So I strongly urge you to not be afraid to help stretch and grow your people. And sometimes people will be resistant, but remember the why behind that what. People resist because they're afraid. They don't want to embarrass themselves. They don't want to fail. They don't want to let you down. So sometimes as a leader, one of the best things that you can do is encourage them and speak your belief into them. I've done this many, many times successfully, and the people that I've worked with have responded very well to it. And I remind people of a few things. One, I see the potential in you that sometimes you don't see in yourself, because I'm not talking myself out of it. I see it. It's just clearly visible to me. So I believe in you. I believe you can do this, even though you may not see it. And then I also remind people that sometimes the harder something is to do, the sweeter it feels when they accomplish it. And then I ask people, have you ever had a time in your life where there was something that you were procrastinating against, or you were resisting, you were afraid to do it? Then you finally got in and you tackled it. And when you were done, especially because it was hard, you were like, oh my gosh, I feel amazing now. Well, to date, everybody that I've asked that question of has agreed that they've had that kind of experience. Well, that's really cool. And what that does, it instills in people then that fresh belief that if I was able to accomplish that thing, maybe he or she is right. Maybe I can accomplish this thing. Another pro that was brought up from leaders was that they were highly organized. It's incredible to me how much organization comes up in conversation, either as a compliment or as a complaint, because a leader is not very organized. So think about that and really challenge yourself to look with honest, open eyes around you at your physical surroundings, but also in your approach. Do you come at things and you're kind of like all over the map and it's chaotic and your thinking's not clear? Or have you really outlined and been able to succinctly be able to communicate instructions and goals and objectives and things like that? Organized thinking and organized surroundings make us more efficient, make us more effective, improves performance, which absolutely enhances net profitability. And remember, if you're in a leadership position, like part of your job is to help the company to the best of your ability to be net profitable, either to become or remain net profitable. And then this last one, this is one of my favorites. If you've listened to my podcast before, at some point, you have probably heard me say this. This will be something I will talk about until the day I die. How important it is that leaders express gratitude and appreciation. But it's got to be authentic. It's got to be genuine. It can't be false flattery. It can't be just trying to manipulate people into doing something. But I tell the leaders that I work with, if you're intentional to look around, you can find something authentic to compliment people for and to express your gratitude and appreciation. And when you begin to make that a matter of practice, your people will bend over backwards to accomplish things for you. So make sure that that is something that you hold yourself accountable for, that you do on a regular basis, and you set your mindset to becoming more aware of and more intentional about. And that is to find things to thank your people for and to say, boy, I appreciate the job you did there. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your dependability, your reliability. I thank you for your accuracy. I thank you for the initiatives that you take. Whatever it is that you find to encourage them in, that's positive reinforcement. And I'll tell you something, that's going to make you a great leader. Now let's talk about some of the cons that came up in this exercise that I took these people through. So one of the biggest cons, and I heard this multiple times, and it's not the first time I've heard this. I've heard this many times throughout the years. And so many leaders fall into this trap. And I'm going to just make a confession. I've done this. I've made this mistake. I've done it many more times than once in my life. I've always regretted it. It's never done anything but undermine my leadership goals. Yet I've made that mistake. Usually when I was tired, stressed, feeling the pressure of maybe some deadlines, or maybe worried or concerned about something, I reacted out of emotion and fatigue instead of doing what I know works. So I say that as a caution. I will also tell you that being intentional and practicing through the years, I have become much, much better. So thankfully, this is a rare occurrence for me now, when in my younger years, it would have been much more consistent. but I wish I could go back in time, and I wish I could have a do-over for every moment that I've made this mistake. And it's simply this. It's talking to people in a way that comes across degrading or condescending or disrespectful, in a way that frankly strips people of their dignity. And I've done it. And I can't imagine any leader out there who probably hasn't done it at least once in their lives. But we can't go back and change the past. However, what we can do is we can take those mistakes and let them become a catalyst for our resolve not to continue doing that in the future. There's a terminology that's used in religious circles that a lot of people have heard it, but they don't really think about what it means. And it's the word repent, where the word repent means to turn away from, to turn your back on, to resolve not to do that again. And so as leaders, it would really serve our people and our organizations, and frankly us, well, if we would repent from speaking to people in any way that can be disrespectful. And sometimes it's the word you say, and sometimes it's the tone in which you say it. So think about both. Oh, and there's a third thing too. Sometimes we communicate by our facial expressions and our body language. So we may think that we're masking how we truly feel, but we don't realize that our face is speaking a completely different message than what's coming out of our mouth. So be mindful of that as well. Another con that I heard about leaders they had worked for before was lack of communication. Oh my gosh. We've talked about communication before. We'll talk about it again. We could talk about communication until our dying breaths. Communication is not cliche. Communication is an evergreen issue that will always need to be addressed. Communication is that thing that we can learn really good information, good practices, good exercises, good habits. And if we're not careful and we don't stay on top of it, it can slip away. And communication goes from all levels. And I always remind people of this. Yes, it is very important. If you're in a management or leadership position, you need to be very mindful that you are communicating well. You're communicating clearly, consistently, that you're asking clarifying questions of people to make sure that they truly understood what you're trying to express. But we also have to remember that if we are reporting to people who are in a position higher than our own, we have an equal responsibility to communicate and communicate clearly. One of the things that came up in this exercise as I was talking to these managers was how many times they don't tell someone who is their leader, or maybe in the past they didn't tell someone who is a leader, a key piece of information. Maybe it was because of a job that they did. And so because they were that frontline person working that job day in and day out, only they saw and recognized some problems, or only they saw and recognized maybe some possible improvements or solutions. So if that is you, don't withhold that good information. Share that up and communicate well going up as well as you communicate well going down. Another con that came up was playing favorites. And we had a really stirring conversation about this because it was fascinating. There is a little bit of a yin and a yang to this. So we talked about the perception sometimes that a leader is playing favorites, but then we talked about why as leaders, sometimes we fall prey to it and we don't even recognize or realize that we're doing it. And so we talked about what is it that can make people become our favorites at work. And of course, one of the first things was, well, the people who are somewhat the easy button, you go to them, you know, they catch on pretty quickly. They're very cooperative. They care about doing the job well. So you're not going to have to spend a whole lot of time with them. They're going to get the job done fast, and they're going to do it accurately. And you're not going to have to babysit it. So that can become the easy button. But as leaders, we do have to be careful that we don't always just turn to the easy button. There's a couple of things. One, maybe if we would invest a little bit of time mentoring, training, teaching some other people, maybe they may not catch on quite as fast, but if you invest that time, there are some people who are slow and steady learners, and there are some people who are the fast and quick grasp, right? But those slow and steady learners, don't discount them, because when they get it, they get it. And if you are just constantly going to the ones who, catch on quick, then you may miss some talents and opportunities with these other folks who are slow and steady. And you'll also lose some loyalty and you'll lose some respect from them. And we've talked about justification before. When people feel as if they are disrespected or not valued, then many times they become prone to justification, where they justify behaviors that they would not have done otherwise, okay? So think about that. So be careful about playing favorites. Another thing that I recommended to the group is sometimes you really in that moment, because of conditions, you don't have a choice but to go to that person who can get it done fast and accurately and so forth. When the opportunity presents itself, or maybe you need to create the opportunity, go to some of those other people that you didn't have work on that project and just say something to the effect of, hey, I just want you to know I had, John work on this. But it doesn't mean that I don't believe in you. I'm going to have some other things that I'm going to have you work on. It's just they have a particular skill set that made them, able to get that done for me in the timeline I needed it. But you have your own very strong skill sets, and don't think that I don't see and appreciate them. Just a little something like that can go a long way to easing people's minds. Because see, when it seems like we're playing favorites, to that person who doesn't get that kind of, I'll say, attention from us, it can feel as if we don't think that they're doing a good enough job. And it can really douse the fire, the spirit in people, and it can lower morale. And I can show you study after a study that will show that when people have a low morale, they just are not able to produce at a high level. And not only that, quality diminishes as well. So you have quantity and quality issues. So make sure that you are being very mindful and that your mindset is not always going to the easy button. Think about the entirety of your team. And sometimes it's very worthwhile for you to invest in someone for the long-term results instead of always just thinking about the short term. Another thing that came up in the cons was expecting too much of employees, more than could be sustained. So what one of the employees said in particular, one of these managers, was when they were on a front line, they did some things really well. But because they did those well, they just had more and more and more piled on top of them, to the point they reached this stage where they just felt like they were spread too thin and they weren't able to do anything well. So be careful of that. And it kind of ties into what we were just talking about too. If you're constantly pushing the easy button with those, I'll put, if you can see my air quotes, favorite people, you can burn your favorite people out. You can actually frustrate them because you can overload them. So spread it out, balance those projects and assignments that you give to different people. It may take a little bit more work for you on the front end, but I promise you on the back end of this, it's going to exponentially drive up the results that you see from performance, from improved processes, and certainly from net profitability. And then another thing was they said that as employees under leaders, that sometimes they didn't feel cared about, that their well-being didn't seem to matter. And that old, anyone can be replaced kind of mentality. Let me tell you, that's a dangerous mindset to have about your employees. And it's really bad to say it to someone. I believe if you invest yourself, you mentor and you coach and you teach and you train employees well, the majority, I'm not going to say 100%, but the majority of people respond to that very well. And many times they can become what I call the irreplaceable employee, because I do believe there are some people who end up doing such a great job. Like if they go, things are never quite the same. You just can't imagine anybody else being able to do the job to the level that they do. You can help create that. And it starts with your mindset. How are you thinking about your people? But if you're looking at all your people and you're thinking, I can replace any of you. If that's the attitude that you have, I promise you that attitude is going to be projected onto them and their performance is going to be affected as a result. And then this con, using people to get out of their work, pawning off their tasks onto other people. I have seen this. I have heard this. I have experienced this many times over. When you are a leader, your job is to guide. Your job is to mentor and coach, teach and train. Your job is to encourage. Your job is to support. Your job is to serve. Your job is to create an atmosphere that I call teach them to fish, where it's not just you trying to do everything, but you have a multiplicity of people who can do lots of different things that help you to bring in a bigger catch, I'll say. But there are some leaders who take that too far. And what they end up doing is they look at themselves as being elevated, being superior. I'm the boss now. And so I'll just get this person to do this and this person to do that. And they just kind of kick back a little bit. That is not exceptional leadership, and it's certainly not going to lead to exceptional outcomes. So make sure that your people don't see you as you using them for you to climb the ladder of success. Sometimes as leaders, we do need to delegate, and exceptional leaders can do that, and they do that very well. But they do it in a balanced, healthy way. They do not do that to use people for their personal gain. And they don't wipe their feet on people to climb up to where they want to go. So challenge yourself, do some gut checks occasionally, and make sure that you're not having other people do your work. Because I'll tell you this, if that's a practice that you have, you may get away with that for a little while. But I've watched this over and over too. It always catches up with you. Okay. And so finally, I want to talk about the things that some of these people said that they would if they could go back in time, they would thank that leader for. And I thought this was really interesting. One of the managers in this group, very deep introverted person. And sometimes in our world where we celebrate extroverts, we make the mistake of believing that extroverts make the best leaders. And that is not truth. Extroverts and introverts will have a different approach to leadership, but each can lead equally well. And so this very deep introvert said, I had a previous leader that, frankly, he was pretty harsh. And it was difficult to work for him at times. But one thing I have to give him credit for, he always encouraged me to have more of a backbone and not to let people walk on me, because I used to be really bad at that. And they said, today I am able to speak more confidently. And that caused another really great conversation among the group, because based on personality, and again, if you've listened to me, you know that I'm the founder not only of P4 Power Coaching, but of the P4 Personality Perspective, which is my own personality program that I've worked for decades to develop, so it's as simple as possible so people can remember it. And I show them how to use it to make their professional and personal lives better. And if you haven't taken the assessment, if you go to my website, there's a free assessment. You can take it, costs you nothing, no strings, or anything like that. But as we were having the conversation, and I'd already taken all of them through the P4 personality perspective training, we were able to have a really good, healthy conversation about what our personalities do to influence our leadership styles. And so in that, I reminded them that, that for the deep introvert especially, often they're going to need to exercise courage and confidence in how they project themselves as a leader, because that's not natural for them. They have to use energy to do that, but they can do it, and they can do it exceptionally well. They just have to be very intentional with that. But more people will respect them if they see them as speaking confidently and courageously. And courageously means holding people accountable when it's hard for you, when you are afraid of messing it up or afraid of someone being mad at you. But you know what? You know it's the right thing to do, and so you do the hard right thing. And you do hold people accountable. You can do that very well when you set your mindset to be courageous and confident in how you do it. But conversely, that extroverted personality needs to be intentional to show grace and gentleness in their approach, because oftentimes the extrovert naturally exudes confidence and sometimes overconfidence, which can come across as being overbearing. And so we have to remember that sometimes it's more appropriate for us to show grace and gentleness in our approach, and we'll get more from people. People will be more responsive to what we have to say to them, even if we do have to exert some accountability measures. So whatever your personality is, think about what you need to be intentional to display more to get the best results as a leader. And it starts with your mindset, what you're saying to yourself about people and what you're saying to yourself about you and what you're able to do. Another thing that someone said that they would thank a previous leader for was showing me how not to speak to people. Love this. So this person actually had a string of what to me sounded frankly like abusive and toxic leaders. I mean, they described some pretty intense scenarios that I can tell you, not only were those leaders not leading exceptionally well, but they were damaging and they could have been harmful. But I love what this person did. Instead of allowing that to become a negative and wallowing and feeling sorry for themselves, what they chose to do instead was they used all the things that they saw in those previous leaders that was hurtful or harmful, and they resolved they were going to do the opposite of that. And I can tell you, this person is making just an amazing leadership impact in their role. They've only been in this role for a few months, and I'm just thrilled with what I'm seeing from them. But it's because they decided to look at the mistakes of others, learn from them, and then act differently. And so they are very respectful of their employees. They ask questions, they listen to their employees, and then they let them know that they hear them, even if they're not able to do everything that the employees want. We all know we can't always do that. But their employees feel respected. Their employees feel as if it's safe to come to this person. And so this individual actually learns about a lot of issues and problems early on. And so they've been able to address things very quickly, which has saved and made the company a lot of money. So think about that. Think about what can you learn from other people that maybe said or did some hurtful and harmful things to you when they were in a leadership position and you were not. And then challenge yourself to rise above and do the opposite of that. And then the last one that they came up with, and several people agreed with this and said that's exactly what I would say. So we ended up stopping here. But they said they would love to go back and thank a previous leader for showing them how to appreciate good people, and then, not pawning their work off, that they felt like these were leaders that they did come shoulder to shoulder. Like they understood that, their leaders had other work to do and they weren't supposed to be on that front line. But when the chips were down, there was a big deadline or there was a lot of pressure on, that leader wasn't afraid to step in and say, hey, let me help. Let me come alongside you. Or how can I support you? Are there any resources or supplies or anything else that you're missing? And so they really felt like that leader saw their needs, their concerns, they cared about it, they showed compassion, but then they stepped in and they really helped. So I thought that was amazing. And I think that's something all of us can learn from. And so for you, leader, if you have not ever done it, or if it's been a while since you have, I want you to take a little bit of time and reflect back on the people you've worked for in the past. What were those traits that you were like, wow, they were so amazing. They changed my life. Like I think back to a manager that I had way back when I was 20 years old, my first office job. His name was Glenn. And Glenn was the first person that I had ever experienced. And I'm sad to say, I love my parents. I love other family members, but this was just not something that happened in our family dynamic, that people said these words. But Glenn said them often. He didn't overuse it. He didn't say them unless he didn't mean it. And you knew that about Glenn. But his mindset was fixed on looking for things that people did well. And then he would say, I appreciate that. I appreciate you. And he did it on the regular. And again, he did it sincerely. But we all knew from the depth of our being that Glenn did appreciate us and he would fight for us. I saw him take chewings for things he didn't have anything to do with, but never once did he throw his people under the bus. He just took it. And he continued to encourage us. Now, if we needed some discipline, he would do that in a very healthy way. If there needed to be accountability measures, Glenn would take care of that. But we always knew that Glenn's mindset was more focused on what we did right than on looking for things that we might do wrong. And I think that that is a trait that all of us who want to be exceptional leaders can learn from. This year, my one word is bigger, but I'm approaching my one word a little bit differently than I have before. And this is part of just improving my mindset because, it's an ongoing thing. And so I'm listing different things that I want to be bigger in my life this year. So I have some things that are like, bigger grace, bigger love, bigger commitment, bigger compassion. I have things like bigger discipline, bigger follow through, but it's also bigger impact. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm flawed. I make mistakes. I'm definitely imperfect, but every day I'm really striving to repent. I'll use that word again and make a bigger impact by following the things that I'm sharing, that I'm teaching. And I would just say to you, think about your mindset and then how can you help other people's mindset and work on those mindsets to make your bigger impact. That's the takeaway I want you to get from today. And until next time, as always, I also want to remind you to stay intentional and be exceptional. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. There's magic in meeting with an objective, and I always have an objective for you, not only in these episodes, but also from the other resources I offer on my website, anitabrooks.com. That's ANITABROOKS.com. There you'll find information on digital courses, webinars, books, workbooks, Of course, my in-person P4 power coaching for businesses and organizations. And if you need a speaker for your conference or your strategic retreat, I'm your gal. But I'm also excited to let you know about a new service that we're offering. For less than half the price of a daily Starbucks latte for a month, you can join our P4 Power Coaching community. This is a monthly membership where you'll get insider tips. And you'll also be able to join our monthly Zoom meetings that are one part strategy sessions, one part mastermind, one part networking, one part coaching. I can promise you'll not only learn from me, but you'll learn from others in the group. We'll also have monthly webinars as part of the P4 Power Coaching community, and we'll have coaching resources and exercises. And you'll get first opportunities and special offers for many of the other things that we have to offer. And of course, you will get leadership encouragements. The P4 Power Coaching community is all about growth, success, and celebrating our wins. And remember, it's never too late for a fresh start with fresh faith. So embrace your exceptional leadership impact with fresh resolve to make the difference you were made for.